On a rainy night, a millionaire aids a homeless black woman. When he recognizes her voice, memories flood back. What forgotten connection will be revealed, and how will it reshape their futures? And if you cherish your family and love videos like this, subscribe to our channel to have 10 years of luck in your life. The evening rain pelted against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Ethan Parker's penthouse apartment on the Upper East Side. The city lights blurred through the streams of water, creating a distorted reflection of New York's skyline. Ethan stood motionless, one hand pressed against the cold glass, the other clutching a crystal tumbler filled with aged scotch. His reflection showed a man in his early 40s, wearing an impeccably tailored suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. The vastness of his apartment emphasized his solitude. Modern art pieces worth millions adorned the walls, but they felt more like expensive wallpaper than objects of passion. The space was meticulously designed, yet sterile, lacking any personal touches that would suggest someone actually lived there. A cleaning service maintained its pristine condition, but there were no family photos, no books left open on coffee tables, no signs of life beyond the bare necessities of existence. Ethan's success story appeared in business magazines regularly. They called him a financial genius, a self-made billionaire who transformed a modest inheritance into an empire. His investment firm, Parker Capital, managed funds larger than the GDP of some small countries. Yet standing there, watching the rain, he felt nothing but emptiness. His phone buzzed continuously with messages and emails he couldn't bring himself to answer. Board meetings, charity galas, investment opportunities, they all blended into a monotonous routine that had lost its meaning. The excitement of closing deals and watching numbers grow in bank accounts had faded years ago, leaving behind a gnawing question: what was it all for? Several stories below, on the corner of 73rd Street, a different scene unfolded. Jasmine stood under the minimal shelter of a building's overhang, her guitar case open at her feet. She wore a weathered jacket that had seen better days, but it was clean. She made sure of that. Her dark hair, damp from the rain, framed a face that carried both strength and weariness. Despite the weather, or perhaps because of it, her voice carried through the rain-soaked air with remarkable clarity. The song she sang wasn't one of those popular tunes street performers often chose to attract attention. It was something older, more soulful, a melody that seemed to speak directly to the heart of anyone who took the time to listen. But in typical New York fashion, most people hurried past, their umbrellas tilted against the rain, their minds focused on reaching their destinations. A few coins and small bills lay scattered in her guitar case, barely enough for a meal at a cheap diner. Yet Jasmine sang with the same passion she would have brought to a concert hall. Her fingers, slightly numb from the cold, moved skillfully across the guitar strings, creating harmonies that complemented her voice perfectly. The rain intensified, and the few pedestrians who had stopped to listen quickly dispersed. Still, Jasmine continued, her voice growing stronger, as if in defiance of the weather and her circumstances. The song spoke of loss and hope, themes that resonated deeply with her own situation, though none of the passers-by knew her story. From his vantage point above, Ethan noticed the gathering of people before they dispersed. The sound didn't reach his apartment, but something about the scene caught his attention. He watched the lone figure continuing to perform despite the increasingly hostile weather. There was something compelling about such dedication, something that stirred a long-forgotten memory. Making a sudden decision, Ethan placed his untouched drink on an NE/RB table. He grabbed his coat and headed for the elevator, surprising his security team with his abrupt departure. As the elevator descended, the familiar knot of emptiness in his chest loosened slightly, replaced by an inexplicable urgency to reach the street below. When he stepped out of his building's lobby, the rain immediately began soaking through his expensive coat. The sound of Jasmine's voice became clearer with each step he took toward the corner. The melody wrapped around him, triggering memories he had buried deep in his mind. He stopped several feet away from her, transfixed not just by the song, but by something else, something he couldn't quite identify. Their eyes met briefly as Jasmine finished her song. In that moment, Both felt an inexplicable connection, like a thread of fate pulling them together. Neither could have guessed how this chance encounter would unravel both their lives and reveal long-buried secrets that connected them in ways they never imagined. The rain had subsided to a gentle drizzle when Ethan approached Jasmine. His usual confidence wavered as he searched for the right words. The streetlights cast long shadows across the wet pavement, creating an almost theatrical setting for their first real interaction. "Your voice," Ethan began, his voice slightly unsteady. "It reminds me of someone I knew long ago." He noticed Jasmine tensing slightly as he spoke, her hands instinctively tightening around her guitar. "There was a woman who worked for my family when I was young. Her name was Maria Santos. She used to sing that same song." Jasmine's expression shifted almost imperceptibly at the mention of the name. She continued packing her guitar, her movements deliberately slow and controlled. "A lot of people know that song," she replied, her voice neutral but guarded. "It's not exactly rare." The memory of Maria flooded Ethan's mind, transporting him back to his childhood home. He was 8 years old again, sitting in the mansion's kitchen while Maria prepared his afternoon snack. Unlike the other household staff who maintained professional distance, Maria treated him with genuine warmth. She would sing while she worked, her voice filling the house with melodies that made even his stern father pause in appreciation. Maria taught him things that weren't in his expensive private school curriculum. She showed him how to make paper boats and sail them in puddles after rain. When other children bullied him because of his family's wealth, she taught him that true worth wasn't measured in dollars, but in how you treated others. These lessons stayed with him, though somewhere along the way, he had forgotten to apply them. "She worked for us for almost 5 years, Ethan continued, watching Jasmine's reactions carefully. "She disappeared one day, without explanation. My parents never spoke of her again, but I never forgot her kindness." He paused, noting how Jasmine's hands trembled slightly as she closed her guitar case. "She had a daughter about my age. I never met her, but Maria would talk about her constantly." Jasmine stood abruptly, slinging her guitar case over her shoulder. "Look, I appreciate the story, but I need to go. It's getting late, and I need to find somewhere to stay for the night." Her voice carried a hint of bitterness that suggested deeper wounds. Ethan glanced at the threatening sky and made a quick decision. "Let me help. There's a diner around the corner. At least let me buy you dinner, get you out of this weather for a while." He saw the immediate suspicion in her eyes and added quickly, "No strings attached. Just dinner and conversation." The internal struggle played across Jasmine's face. Years of street survival had taught her to be wary of strangers offering help, especially wealthy ones. But something in Ethan's expression, a genuine concern she rarely encountered, made her hesitate. "One meal," she finally agreed, maintaining a safe distance between them. "And then we go our separate ways." They walked to the diner in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The fluorescent lights inside created a harsh contrast to the romantic dimness of the street. A tired waitress led them to a booth, barely raising an eyebrow at their mismatched appearance, a man in a designer suit and a woman who clearly lived on the streets. As they settled into the worn vinyl seats, Ethan noticed details about Jasmine he had missed in the street's dim light. Despite her circumstances, she carried herself with dignity. Her clothes, though worn, were clean and carefully mended. Her eyes, when they met his, showed intelligence and caution in equal measure. The memory of Maria's lessons echoed in his mind. "Everyone has a story worth hearing, Ethan. Everyone deserves to be seen as a person, not a circumstance." He wondered what Maria would think of him now, sitting across from her daughter in a late-night diner, both of them carrying secrets that would soon unravel their carefully constructed worlds. Over the next week, Ethan and Jasmine's paths continued to intersect, each encounter revealing new layers of their connected histories. Ethan made a point of visiting the street corner where he first found her, always arriving at sunset when she typically performed. Despite her initial reluctance, Jasmine began to expect his visits, though she maintained a careful emotional distance. One evening, Ethan suggested showing her around the city, not the tourist attractions, but the hidden gems he had discovered over years of living in New York. He took her to a rooftop garden in Brooklyn that few knew existed, where the Manhattan skyline stretched before them like a glittering canvas. Jasmine's eyes widened at the view, momentarily forgetting her guardedness. "I used to dream about views like this," she admitted, leaning against the railing. "My mother would describe the city's beauty, but we never had the chance to experience it properly." Her voice carried a weight of unspoken memories. During their walks through lesser-known neighborhoods, Jasmine gradually shared fragments of her story. She spoke of growing up in a series of small apartments, moving whenever rent became unmanageable. Her mother worked multiple jobs, yet always found time to sing to her every night. Music became their shared language, a way to communicate when words failed them. She wanted to be a professional singer, Jasmine revealed during one of their conversations in a small coffee shop. She had the talent, everyone said so, but life kept getting in the way. She traced patterns in the condensation on her coffee cup, lost in recollection. She took jobs as a housekeeper, a waitress, whatever she could find. But she never stopped singing. Ethan listened intently, recognizing pieces of Maria in Jasmine's descriptions. The same determination, the same passion for music, the same quiet dignity in the face of hardship. Yet there was something more complex beneath the surface, a tension in Jasmine's voice when she spoke of certain periods in their lives. Their conversations often circled back to music. During one particularly memorable evening, they found themselves in Washington Square Park. The sun had set, and the usual crowd of street performers had thinned. Jasmine took out her guitar, almost unconsciously, and began to play. The song that emerged was hauntingly familiar to Ethan. It was an old lullaby, one that Maria used to sing when she thought no one was listening. The melody carried through the park, drawing the attention of passing strangers who stopped to listen. "My mother sang this every night when I was young," Jasmine explained between verses. "She said it was passed down through generations in our family." Her fingers moved across the guitar strings with practiced ease, muscle memory taking over as emotions played across her face. Ethan felt his throat tighten as memories flooded back. He remembered lying in his bed, hearing this same melody riffed up from the kitchen where Maria worked late into the evening. The song had always carried a sadness he couldn't understand as a child, but now, hearing it from Jasmine, the melancholy took on new meaning. As the week progressed, the complexity of their situation became increasingly apparent. Jasmine's story revealed a life marked by constant struggle, yet filled with moments of extraordinary resilience. She spoke of her mother's dedication to her education, insisting she take music lessons even when they could barely afford groceries. Each revelation added another piece to a puzzle that neither of them fully understood yet. Ethan found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about his privileged upbringing, while Jasmine grappled with memories that had long been buried. The dynamics of their relationship shifted subtly with each meeting. What began as curiosity evolved into genuine concern and connection. Ethan saw beyond Jasmine's current circumstances to the person she truly was: talented, intelligent, and carrying a strength that surpassed his own. Meanwhile, Jasmine began to see past Ethan's wealth to recognize a genuine desire to understand and help. Yet beneath their growing connection lay unspoken questions and hidden truths that threatened to complicate everything. Neither could have predicted how their paths would collide, forcing them to confront realities they weren't prepared to face. The truth emerged on a quiet Sunday afternoon in Ethan's penthouse office. He had spent hours combing through old family records, driven by a growing suspicion about the connection between Maria and Jasmine. Among forgotten documents and yellowed photographs, he found what he had been searching for: a letter written by Maria to his father, dated just days before her disappearance. The contents of the letter revealed a complex web of relationships and promises. Maria and Jasmine's mother weren't just friends. They were sisters who had made a pact years ago. If anything happened to either of them, the other would care for their child. Maria had worked for the Parkers not just as a means of survival, but to stay close to her niece's future guardian, Ethan's father. When Ethan shared this discovery with Jasmine during their next meeting at a small cafe, her reaction was a mixture of pain and revelation. "My mother passed away 3 months ago," she confessed, her hands wrapped tightly around a coffee cup that had long gone cold.
Cancer.
We couldn't afford proper treatment. In her final days, she kept mentioning someone named Maria, but I thought it was the medication making her confused. The weight of missed opportunities and broken promises hung heavy in the air between them. Ethan learned that after Maria's sudden departure from the Parker household, she had tried to maintain contact with Ethan's father, sending letters that were never answered. Each unopened envelope represented another fracture in the support system that should have protected Jasmine. "I should have known," Ethan said, his voice thick with regret. "All those years, Maria was trying to fulfill her promise to your mother. My father must have discovered their connection and forced her to leave." The realization of his family's role in Jasmine's hardships hit him with crushing force. Jasmine absorbed this information with quiet intensity. The story of her life was being rewritten before her eyes, filling in blank spaces she hadn't even known existed. Her mother's occasional mentions of a wealthy family who could have helped them, the mysterious aunt who disappeared, the unopened letters hidden in a shoebox under her mother's bed. It all formed a pattern she was only now beginning to understand. "When my mother got sick, she tried reaching out to her family one last time," Jasmine revealed. The letter was returned unopened. That's when she finally gave up hope. Her voice carried no accusation, just a deep, residual sadness that made Ethan's guilt of.
In Moricute.
The revelation sparked a transformation in Ethan. The emptiness he had felt in his life suddenly had context. It was the space left by abandoned responsibilities and forgotten promises. His father's teachings about business success and financial acumen seemed hollow compared to Maria's lessons about empathy and human connection. That evening, Ethan made a decision that would alter both their lives. He would honor Maria's promise, not out of obligation but because he had come to care deeply about Jasmine's welfare. However, he understood that trust, once broken, couldn't be rebuilt with money alone. "I want to help," he told her, "not to ease my conscience or fulfill an old promise, but because you deserve the chance that was taken from you." His words carried the weight of genuine commitment, different from the casual charity he had dispensed throughout his life. Jasmine studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. The street-hardened survivor in her warned against accepting help from anyone connected to her past pain. Yet something in Ethan's sincerity, perhaps the echo of Maria's influence she recognized in him, made her pause. The charity event at the Metropolitan Opera House represented a pivotal moment in both Ethan and Jasmine's journey. The Grand Hall, with its crystal chandeliers and gold leaf ceilings, stood in stark contrast to the street corners where Jasmine had been performing just weeks before. Ethan had arranged for her to perform during the evening's program, though he hadn't told her it would be in front of New York's most influential social circle. Jasmine stood backstage, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the midnight blue gown Ethan had helped her select. The dress marked a transformation, not just in appearance, but in possibility. Through the curtain, she could hear the murmur of hundreds of voices, the gentle clinking of champagne glasses, and the subtle rustling of expensive fabric. Meanwhile, Ethan navigated the crowd with practiced ease, though his mind remained distracted. Marcus Wellington, a longtime business associate, cornered him near the bar. "Parker, we need to discuss the Shanghai development," Marcus said, his voice low and insistent. "I've found a way to bypass those pesky environmental regulations. The profit margins would triple." His eyes gleamed with the promise of easy money. The proposal hung in the air between them. A year ago, Ethan would have jumped at such an opportunity. Now Maria's voice echoed in his memory. "Money earned through hurting others brings no joy, only shame." He thought of the communities that would be affected by such negligence, families like Jasmine's who often bore the brunt of corporate greed. "I'm not interested, Marcus," Ethan replied firmly. The other man's expression darkened with surprise and disappointment. Around them, several business associates who had been listening discreetly exchanged knowing looks. Ethan could already imagine the whispers that would circulate through boardrooms. Parker's going soft, letting sentiment cloud his judgment. Before Marcus could argue further, the lights dimmed. Jasmine took the stage, her presence commanding immediate attention. The piano introduction began, and when she started to sing, the entire room fell silent. Her voice, powerful yet intimate, filled the space with an emotion that transcended social barriers. The song she chose wasn't a safe, conventional selection. Instead, it was a piece about struggle, hope, and resilience, her own story wrapped in melody. As she sang, Ethan watched the faces in the crowd transform. The usual masks of polite indifference gave way to genuine emotion. Even Marcus, still standing beside him, seemed transfixed. In that moment, Ethan understood something profound about power and influence. The real impact of wealth wasn't in the ability to bypass regulations or maximize profits, but in the potential to create opportunities for authentic
Talent to shine.
He saw his role changing, not just as a successful businessman, but as someone who could bridge worlds that seemed impossibly far apart. After her performance, the audience responded with genuine enthusiasm. Society women who would normally never associate with someone of Jasmine's background approached her with sincere compliments. Music producers discreetly passed their business cards to Ethan, inquiring about her future plans. However, success brought its own complications. Ethan noticed several of his board members huddled in conversation, casting disapproving glances his way. His recent business decisions, coupled with his public support of a homeless performer, threatened the carefully cultivated image of Parker Capital. The whispers grew louder. Was Ethan Parker losing his edge? Had sentiment finally overtaken his legendary business acumen? Yet watching Jasmine navigate the crowd with growing confidence, Ethan felt more certain of his path than ever before. The emptiness that had plagued him in his penthouse was filling with purpose. Maria's lessons about empathy and genuine connection weren't just moral guidelines. They were the foundation of a more meaningful kind of success. The weeks following the charity event brought dramatic changes to both Jasmine's and Ethan's lives. Working together, they began building Jasmine's musical career with careful consideration. Ethan applied his business acumen differently now, focusing on sustainable growth rather than rapid exploitation. He helped her navigate contract negotiations, arrange studio time, and develop a performance schedule that wouldn't overwhelm her. During one of their planning sessions in Ethan's office, his assistant delivered a thick manila envelope that would alter everything. Inside were documents from a private investigator Ethan had hired to understand more about Maria's sudden departure years ago. What he discovered sent shockwaves through his carefully constructed world. The investigation revealed that Maria's disappearance was connected to a massive financial scandal involving Parker Industries, Ethan's family company. In 2001, the company had orchestrated a complex scheme that resulted in thousands of workers losing their pensions. Maria had discovered evidence of the fraud while working in the household and had threatened to expose it. Instead of facing the consequences, Ethan's father had forced her into silence through threats and eventually orchestrated her departure. Ethan sat at his desk, papers spread before him, his world tilting on its axis. The company's success, his inheritance, his entire fortune, all of it was built on the destruction of lives like Maria's and Jasmine's. The realization made him physically ill. His father, whom he had always viewed as a stern but fair businessman, had deliberately ruined lives to protect their wealth. Meanwhile, Jasmine's career began gaining momentum. Her first professional recordings captured the raw emotion that had first drawn crowds on street corners, but now refined through proper training and production. Small venues led to larger ones, and soon she had a modest but growing following. Ethan watched her success with a mixture of pride and increasing guilt, knowing that his support was partially funded by money that had indirectly caused her family's hardships. The weight of this knowledge affected their interactions. Ethan became more reserved, his enthusiasm tempered by the burden of his discovery. Jasmine noticed the change, but attributed it to business pressures. Their working relationship continued, but something had shifted beneath the surface. During a late-night session in the recording studio, Jasmine performed a song she had written about her mother's struggles. The lyrics spoke of broken dreams and unfulfilled promises, unknowingly echoing the very events Ethan had uncovered. He had to leave the room, unable to bear the weight of his family's role in her story. The Situa. Tyne grew more complex when business associates began questioning Ethan's judgment. His decision to focus on Jasmine's career while simultaneously implementing stricter ethical guidelines at Parker Capital raised concerns among shareholders. Board members whispered about his emotional involvement clouding his business judgment. One evening, after a particularly successful performance, Jasmine found Ethan in his office, surrounded by old company documents. "Is everything okay?" she asked, still glowing from the show's success. Ethan looked at her, seeing both her present triumph and the years of hardship his family had caused. The words stuck in his throat. The truth about their family's connection weighed heavily on him. Each time he helped Jasmine achieve another milestone in her career, the guilt intensified. Was he truly helping her, or was this all an elaborate attempt at personal redemption? The question haunted him, making every decision, every interaction, feel tainted by the past. The truth finally erupted during a pivotal meeting at Parker Capital's headquarters. Jasmine had arrived unexpectedly, hoping to discuss her upcoming tour schedule with Ethan. Instead, she overheard a heated conversation between Ethan and his board members about the company's historical involvement with her family. The revelation hit her with devastating force. Standing in the doorway of the conference room, Jasmine listened as board members discussed damage control strategies regarding the potential exposure of the pension scandal. Her mother's name emerged in the conversation, along with Maria's, and suddenly the pieces fell into place. The hardships she had endured, the struggles her mother had faced, the mysterious circumstances of her aunt's disappearance, all of it connected directly to the Parker family. "How long have you known?" Jasmine's voice cut through the room like ice. The board members fell silent as she stepped forward, her eyes fixed on Ethan. The success and confidence she had built over recent months seemed to crumble under the weight of this betrayal. Ethan's attempt to explain only made things worse. His words about recent discoveries and attempts at redemption sounded hollow against the backdrop of decades of suffering. The recording contract, the performances, the mentorship, everything took on a different meaning in light of this revelation. So this was all about guilt? Jasmine's voice trembled with anger and hurt. Every song, every performance, every moment of supposed friendship, it was just your way of making amends for your family's crimes? The rawness of her emotion filled the room, making the board members shift uncomfortably in their expensive leather chairs. Ethan struggled to express the complexity of his feelings, how his initial guilt had transformed into genuine care and respect. But Jasmine wasn't ready to hear it. The street-hardened survivor in her, the part that had learned to distrust kindness from wealthy strangers, reasserted itself with vengeance. "I need to find my own way," she declared, stepping back from everything Ethan represented. "Without the Parker name, without your money, without the shadow of this history hanging over me." Her decision was final, carrying the weight of generations of injustice. In the following days, Jasmine canceled her upcoming performances and disappeared from the music scene she had begun to enter. She returned to performing on street corners, but in different neighborhoods, avoiding any location associated with her time with Ethan. Her songs took on a new edge, incorporating themes of betrayal and self-discovery. Ethan found himself adrift in the aftermath. His attempts to reach out were met with silence. The board pressured him to distance himself from the situation, concerned about potential scandal if the story leaked to the press. But he couldn't simply return to his former life. The lessons about genuine connection and responsibility that had begun with Maria and continued through Jasmine had transformed him too deeply. The separation affected both of them profoundly. Jasmine struggled to rebuild her identity separate from the opportunities Ethan had provided, while he grappled with the realization that good intentions couldn't erase historical wrongs. The weight of their family's intertwined past threatened to destroy the genuine connection they had built. Jasmine found herself performing at the Blue Note, a small jazz club in Greenwich Village, far from her usual haunts. The intimate venue allowed her raw emotion to connect directly with the audience. Her new songs, born from recent experiences, resonated with authenticity that caught the attention of independent music critics. Without the polish of professional production, her voice carried a truth that couldn't be manufactured. Meanwhile, Ethan immersed himself in investigating his family's past transgressions. Each document he uncovered revealed deeper layers of corruption. His father's carefully constructed empire began to resemble a house of cards, built on broken promises and ruined lives. The emptiness in his penthouse grew more pronounced without Jasmine's presence, serving as a constant reminder of what genuine connection meant. The situation escalated when Michael Chun, an investigative journalist from the New York Times, began digging into Maria's story. His research uncovered connections between her sudden disappearance and the pension scandal. Chun approached both Jasmine and Ethan separately, seeking comments for a story that threatened to expose decades of corporate malfeasance. The journalist's investigation created a crisis for Parker Capital. Board members demanded immediate action to suppress the story, suggesting legal threats and financial pressure. But Ethan, transformed by recent events, refused to participate in another cover-up. His stance created a deep rift within the company he had inherited. During this time, Jasmine received anonymous messages containing detailed information about her mother's struggles with Parker Industries. Each revelation deepened her sense of betrayal, yet also raised questions about the source of this information. The timing and precision of these leaks suggested someone with intimate knowledge of both families' histories. Ethan watched Jasmine's independent success from afar, through social media posts and local music reviews. Her performances now carried themes of resilience and self-discovery, moving beyond the pain of betrayal to something more profound. He recognized that his presence in her life, however well-intentioned, had complicated her journey of artistic expression. The media pressure intensified as Chen's investigation progressed. Old photographs surfaced showing Maria at Parker family events, standing in the background while Ethan's father entertained business associates. These images captured moments just before the pension scandal erupted, suggesting Maria's role as an unwitting witness to corporate fraud. The story threatened both Jasmine's burgeoning career and Ethan's business empire. Music industry insiders, initially drawn to her talent, began distancing themselves, wary of association with a brewing scandal. Ethan faced mounting pressure from shareholders concerned about the company's reputation and stock value. These external pressures forced both Jasmine and Ethan to confront difficult questions about identity and purpose. Jasmine struggled to separate her artistic voice from the shadow of family history, while Ethan grappled with the responsibility of inherited guilt. Their parallel journeys, though separate, remained inexplicably connected through the weight of shared history. The turning point came during a rainstorm reminiscent of the night Ethan and Jasmine first met. Ethan had been working late at his office, reviewing documents for a proposed benefit concert aimed at supporting pension reform and workers' rights. The idea had emerged from his determination to address his family's past wrongs systematically rather than through individual acts of charity. The concert concept was ambitious, bringing together artists who had faced economic hardship, creating a platform for voices that the music industry typically overlooked. Though Jasmine was a part of the planning, her influence shaped every aspect of the event's vision. The venue would be accessible to all income levels, with proceeds directed to a newly established foundation supporting artists from disadvantaged backgrounds. News of the concert spread through New York's music community, eventually reaching Jasmine through her growing network of independent performers. The initiative's genuine attempt to address systemic issues resonated with her own experiences. Despite her initial skepticism, she found herself drawn to the concert's mission. Support for the event grew unexpectedly. Local artists, many of whom had witnessed Jasmine's journey from street performer to emerging artist, began volunteering their talents. Their involvement transformed the concert from a corporate attempt at redemption into a genuine grassroots movement for change. However, an unexpected threat emerged from Ethan's past. Victor Blackwood, a former Parker Industries executive who had orchestrated much of the pension scandal, resurfaced with damaging information. He had maintained detailed records of the company's fraudulent activities, including evidence that implicated multiple current board members. Blackwood approached Ethan with an ultimatum: abandon the benefit concert and return to business as usual, or face the public release of documents that would destroy not only Parker Capital but potentially harm everyone associated with it, including Jasmine. His threat carried the weight of decades of corporate secrets. The situation forced Jasmine to confront her own feelings about Ethan and their shared history. Through conversations with other artists and her own soul-searching, she began to understand that authentic change often came from people willing to acknowledge and address their privilege and past mistakes. Friends and supporters encouraged Jasmine to reconsider her position. They helped her see that her voice could contribute to meaningful change, not just for herself but for others who shared her background. The decision to participate in the concert wasn't about forgiving past wrongs, but about creating future opportunities. The concert's organization continued amid mounting tension. Ethan worked tirelessly to protect both the event and Jasmine from Blackwood's threats, while simultaneously preparing for the possible fallout of exposed corporate secrets. His priority had shifted from preserving wealth to protecting the possibility of genuine redemption and change. This period revealed the true strength of the connections that had formed around both Ethan and Jasmine. Artists, activists, and even some former Parker Industries employees came forward with support, each contributing to a larger narrative about transformation and accountability. The benefit concert's evening arrived with anticipation crackling through the air. The venue, a restored theater in Brooklyn, filled with an eclectic mix of audiences, from street musicians to corporate executives, all drawn by the promise of something extraordinary. Unknown to most attendees, Victor Blackwood had positioned himself in the audience, ready to unleash his devastating revelations. During the opening performances, Ethan received an urgent message that changed everything. His private investigators had uncovered Blackwood's direct connection to the death of Jasmine's mother. Document trails revealed that when she had fallen ill, Blackwood had deliberately buried her medical insurance claims, ensuring they would be denied. This calculated action had prevented her from receiving the treatment that might have saved her life. The evidence painted a devastating picture. Blackwood hadn't just been a participant in the pension scandal. He had systematically worked to silence anyone who might expose the truth. Maria's forced departure, the rejected insurance claims, the strategic dismantling of workers' benefits, all traced back to his decisions, made to protect his own interests rather than following direct orders from the Parker family. Backstage, Jasmine prepared for her performance when Ethan approached her with the truth. For the first time since their falling out, she saw not the weight of inherited guilt in his eyes, but the determination to right a profound wrong. The revelation about her mother's death shifted her understanding of their shared history. The enemy hadn't been Ethan or even his family's legacy, but the corrupt system that Blackwood represented. When Jasmine took the stage, the power of her presence silenced the crowd. Instead of performing her planned song, she began speaking, her voice steady and clear. She shared her mother's story, then Maria's, weaving together the threads of lives affected by corporate greed. As she spoke, Blackwood rose from his seat, moving toward the exit, but security, quietly arranged by Ethan, blocked his escape. Ethan joined her on stage, not as her patron or protector, but as an equal partner in exposing the truth. Together, they revealed the full scope of Blackwood's actions to the assembled crowd. The moment transformed from a musical performance into a public reckoning, years in the making. The audience's reaction was profound. Phones recorded the moment, social media exploded with real-time updates, and news outlets scrambled to cover the story. But more importantly, something shifted in the room. A recognition that genuine change required both accountability and forgiveness, justice and healing. In the aftermath, Parker Capital underwent a fundamental transformation. Ethan used Blackwood's exposure to clean house, replacing corrupt board members and establishing new ethical guidelines. The company's resources were redirected toward creating opportunities for artists and workers who had been marginalized by corporate greed. Jasmine found her voice evolving once again, incorporating themes of reconciliation and renewal. Her music began reaching broader audiences, not because of corporate backing, but because it spoke to universal experiences of loss, healing, and redemption. She and Ethan developed a new kind of partnership, built on mutual respect and a shared commitment to creating meaningful change. The story of the homeless singer and the billionaire became something more profound, a testament to the possibility of genuine transformation, both personal and systemic. Their paths, once forcibly separated by circumstance and corruption, had become truly intertwined, creating a new narrative about power, responsibility, and the healing nature of truth. The ending wasn't a simple happily ever after, but rather the beginning of a longer journey. Jasmine continued performing, her success now entirely her own, while Ethan worked to reshape his company's role in society. Their story inspired others to examine their own relationships with power and privilege, proving that even the deepest wounds could lead to meaningful healing when confronted with courage and compassion.